Greetings everyone and welcome in today's PCB webinar. My name is Gzim and I am the Portfolio Manager for IT Security at PCB. Today we will discuss about the webinar topic, Cybersecurity and Business Resilience. The webinar will be presented by PCB partner and trainer Mr. Bevan Lane. Mr. Lane has more than 16 years of experience as a consultant in information security, firstly with PwC and then as an independent consultant. He has also an extensive experience in information security risk assessment trainings and has implemented solutions for major organizations across the globe. I hope this webinar will help you understand the importance of cybersecurity and its interaction with the business improvements. If you have any question, you can write them at any time in question box right-hand control panel, or you can use the option to raise your hand and we will answer to all of them. Please, Bevan, you may continue.
Good day, I suppose, for everyone around the world. We tried to do this presentation last week and we had major problems with the internet, so it was a bit of a test of business resilience, I think, and unfortunately we failed, so let's see if we can get it right today. The key message I'm going to start off just really with the key message here, is that cybersecurity and business resilience are very reliant on each other. And there seemed to be a time when security and criminals and threats were moving towards more of an information theft than rather takedowns and damaging and effects on business resilience. And this year has shown just how things have turned around again. So criminals are pretty much trying a combination of stealing information and bringing down companies. We've got some really good examples over the last couple of years of massive attacks, but recently massive denial of service. Denial of service records are being broken on a daily basis. So let's go through why it's so relevant, and I'll talk you through the agenda. Obviously the second slide is just a little bit about me, which you heard already. And we'll go through the local, this was based on an African slant, and I'll tell you one or two things about an African slant, but generally we're going to talk about the global cyber trends. Then let's talk about case studies from big attacks, some of the attacks you might not have heard about because they're more back-end type things which affects resilience. Then let's talk about what is the link between cyber risk and business continuity, and the clear message there is that they should not be seen as individual things. They should be seen as working together, as very reliant on each other. And then let's discuss what are they presently doing or what are they not doing, and what should they do in terms of the threat. So there's a lot of trends in terms of cybersecurity, which you may have seen in a lot of other presentations, and generally a lot of these trends tie into cyber resilience. If you look at the different types of attacks that we've seen over the last couple of years and the subtle changes, phishing is still there, but now phishing is moving on to not just stealing information, but also attacking cyber resilience. A lot of phishing attacks are matched to ransomware, or are matched to trying to steal money, or generally trying to get into a network so they can be used as part of the denial of service attacks. Phishing will probably never go away, and no matter how much security awareness training we do on people, the fact that they get much more professional and much more sophisticated and they target you makes it incredibly difficult to fight against. But I believe that there's so much more awareness about phishing that we have definitely dealt with a lot of the risks. The problem is that ransomware has come along and changed the game considerably. So ransomware, as you know, is when somebody clicks on a link, gets sent an email, finds a way, or doesn't even know in some cases, they just go onto a website without realizing it's there, and it infects the machine with a zero-day attack or something which your antivirus can't pick up, and then encrypts your files and then asks you for a ransom to pay for the files to be released. The interesting thing about ransomware is that one of the conference guys that I attended in the soccer conference last year was that they actually rate the ransomware vendors as if they rate anybody else. You rate it on reliability, trust, whether you actually will decrypt, and then certain consultants will advise you about whether or not you should pay for the ransomware or not. So a lot of people have got a sort of a zero tolerance. They refuse to pay these guys, but other people take, you can call it a realistic approach, and they end up paying them. but you've got to have backups. You've got to have proper cyber resilience in place in order to deal with these risks. And the latest attacks on ransomware, which I actually heard about yesterday, is now moving into different leagues where they start searching out servers and encrypting whole servers. So it's no longer just a file share or a PC. This is moving into a league where they're looking at complete servers. Then you've got financial attacks. There were some great attacks on SWIFT where they've tried to find ways through the back end to try and steal money. And we're talking about the Reserve Bank of Bangladesh with hundreds of millions of dollars. And there were other attacks tried in European banks as well. And then, of course, the one that probably is the most closest to what we're trying to talk about here, which again was something which distributed denial of service attacks were things where we were, it's no longer top of our threat vectors. But recent attacks have shown just how close it is actually still to the top as soon as you become a target. And one of our main case studies over the last couple of weeks has been Brian Krebs. He's got his website, Krebs on Security. He posted some articles about denial of service and was then targeted by denial of service guys and targeted so badly that they sent upwards of 700 gigabits per second attacks onto his web server. His service provider and himself tried valiantly to try and keep the website up but failed dismally. If you get attacked by 700 gigabits per second of streaming data, you really have to be incredibly powerful to survive that attack. So the denial of service attacks records have been broken. That was the new record now. I think it's 800 odd gigabits per second is the record at present, and we may be getting up even higher over the next few weeks the way this is going. Seems to be almost a game with these guys to see if they can break the record. So obviously legislation and regulations have been pushing us in order to not just protect our data and to stop breaches, but also to consider how cyber resilience plays a role in this. So we've got to be able to be secure enough to stop the attackers from getting records and private information and personal information and those things. But you also have to find ways of preventing them from bringing us down. And that's obviously far bigger than regulations for us because it affects our profitability, our reputation, and anything else related to our company. But consider how resilience and laws are merging and where it's all going towards this process. All right, so what? We know about these things, right, don't you? Most of you listening to me now have heard about these attacks countless times. What does this actually mean? And that's the key message. If you go online and you read about cyber resilience and development of it, a lot of the standards such as PCI and ISO and 27001 and even COBIT are talking a lot more about how do you manage a breach, because we no longer think, well, we're never going to have a breach and we must stop breaches happening. The key message is if they target you and the right or the wrong people target you, it's going to be incredibly difficult to stop the attack. So the chances are at some point, whether it's cyber resilience or whether it's a data breach, you are going to have a successful attack against you. So how do you respond is the critical survival trait. And as you all know, that critical survival trait relies on having the right initial response and having a proven methodology which you've tested supporting that response. That includes things like having immediate response processes, having forensics involved, and understanding who and how to report these incidents and how to manage your brand. Okay, so understand that it's going to happen, and whether it's a small one, medium one, or a large one, is more a matter of luck than anything else. How are you going to respond? Let's talk about some of the recent attacks. It's been, as any time, a very interesting time. The Olympics, the Republican or the Democratic National Convention, we've had hacks on Bitcoin where they stole $80 million of Bitcoin from Bitfinex. The interview obviously happened really last year where Sony was hacked for the umpteenth time because of unhappiness. And it was also a combination of information being stolen and also a bit of a resilience attack as well. So the Olympic one is the closest to what we're talking about here, where the Olympics as an organization were hacked because of unhappiness over many things. And you can see Anonymous specifically picked on them. So they took over the website, replaced it with their own material, and in some cases just brought down websites. Now, for the Olympics to not have any reporting mechanisms or any official official websites app is a pretty big deal. Not as big maybe as an organization which functions on the internet, but still has an impact in terms of their brand, in terms of what they do. So in terms of real cyber resilience attacks that attack us as organizations, and what can they do more than just necessarily take a website down? We track down some stories over time. And these two are pretty old, which I suppose is interesting and also not so interesting, but also quite unknown, which I found. Also, the second one, the actual attack on the BP State Oil Fund, is known, but the first one, the German steel mill, was one that I had to search for and was brought onto. The date is unspecified. I assume it's in that same sort of time period between 2008 2009. There's definitely a connection between these attacks and Stuxnet, whether or not it's the same software or whether or not it's just the same concepts. But they managed to get in, and whether it's a nation state, which the assumption is, because an organization or petty criminals would battle to do this, they got into a German steel mill and they managed to manipulate the control system. Basically they couldn't shut it down. And the mill, the system exploded, causing massive, although because it's written in a very forensic German way, unspecified damage. No one says how much damage it caused. But by getting into the blast furnace, stopping the system from cooling down and resulting in a massive explosion, we're talking about one of those few attacks where they were able to go from cyber into physical. So people were hurt, things were destroyed. It doesn't sound like anyone was killed. Luckily, I think they managed to get people out in time, but real damage caused by a cyber attack. Think about the resilience effect of that. The second one was also rumored to be done by a nation state, in this case rumored to be Russia, who attacked the Republic of Azerbaijan and BP's oil pipeline. And they got into the systems because they were connected online and managed to manipulate so that it wasn't able to report on the pressure of the pipeline. And so the pressure of the pipeline, and then they were able to increase the pressure of the pipeline, and the warning systems that were supposed to go off didn't go off. And the pressure increased until it resulted in the pipeline basically exploding out. And you can see the picture back there, which is based on what actually it looked like. They managed to cause massive damage to the pipeline and a huge fire. And it's a very interesting system because I think that the people that invented it didn't realize that this could actually happen with that system. So these are real physical attacks using cyber, which I find very interesting. And then obviously Stuxnet is the most obviously rock attack, and then all the other ones that came after that all derived from these specific attacks. Okay, so cyber resilience and business continuity, as we said at the beginning, need to be seen together. You don't do business continuity projects and not take cyber into account, and cyber should also very seriously look at business continuity. And why? Because everything is coming closer and closer, integrating of IT into business. Mobility is making it a lot more serious. Cloud is out there, and obviously with cloud, you need to change the way you see business continuity and resilience, because you might not back up. You might think because you're in the cloud, you don't need backups, but that one copy in the cloud might be your only copy. And the Internet of Things, also a lot of buzzwords about the Internet of Things. To take it realistically at the moment, it doesn't necessarily store so much information, but those devices, whatever they are that are connected to the Internet of Things, might result in bringing a network down. They might be able to cause damage, they might be able to snoop, they might be able just to cause havoc by spreading viruses through them. And regulations. There's a massive push right now. ISO 27001 has got a huge increase in terms of certification this year. I just read an article about it last week. But we're talking about more than 10% increases in certification over the last year. So there's a big push, and there's a lot of regulations that are pushing business continuity as much as cyber resilience and incident response, as we said earlier. So what are they doing? What are you doing? And what should you do? And what are you doing is sort of related to the old-fashioned approaches. So business continuity teams and security teams are almost like audit teams and security teams and business continuity, often very, very different and very, very separate. And they go and do their work in a silo approach. So let's think about why they do it in a silo approach and how effective it is by doing it that way, because you tend to have guys in business continuity that consider information security as just one aspect of it and maybe very low level, not granular enough. While the guys in information security are just doing business continuity almost to tick a box. They're doing minor aspects of it. Incident response, as we mentioned already, very important part, and if you don't formalize it, you don't have actions in plan, you don't practice it, you don't do cyber resilience tests, which is obviously a major driver at the moment. Having a full-on cyber resilience test to see how you'd handle a cyber resilience attack is very important. And if you don't know what you're protecting, that's also a major issue. So that relies on having proper business impact analysis involved and doing proper risk assessments. And that integrates into the next one. Okay, so cyber risk is either partially or not integrated into business continuity management. And a lot of guys do it almost as an afterthought. And maybe that's, or not maybe, that's definitely an aspect which needs to be strengthened. So what should you be doing? And cyber resilience, I like this definition. It's just those two things put together. So cybersecurity plus business resilience. Think that it's an overall integrated approach. It's not something you do separately. You don't look at business resilience and cybersecurity as two separate concepts. They are one single concept. And as things get closer, as we move into the cloud, as we change the way we do business, it becomes more and more and more relevant. As everything's more on your mobile devices, you're pretty much using cyber or IT facilities to do all your work. So that whole business relies on those things. Therefore, cyber becomes a major aspect of resilience. Okay, and if you do have an attack, how are you going to respond? So make sure that you have effective cybersecurity that doesn't affect the usability of a system, or let's say affects the usability of a system in a way which doesn't lead to loss of business confidence in what you're trying to do. And make sure that your business continuity plans cover your information assets, but cover them in case of being able to resume after an attack is successful. So as soon as possible, that's just a derivative of what business continuity is about, but just sort of taking that idea and pushing it a little bit more into what happens if I have denial of service attack. How does that affect my business systems, and how can I make sure that I make a recovery as soon as possible based on that attack? So yeah, I can shoot through that quite quickly because there's no questions obviously easily a lot for this one, but it does allow us time to possibly answer some questions if there are any. Just to wrap it up, just remember that the key message is that cyber resilience is a term which will not be going away very soon, and we need to understand that there is a very, very strong reliance on cyber and business continuity together these days. I think people should be trying to skill themselves up to be a cyber and a business continuity person who knows well enough in both aspects. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Bevan, for your presentation. We do have some questions. The first one is, what do you recommend to companies implementing ISO 22301 to be in line with cybersecurity tools and techniques?
So what I recommend is that they go in and look wider than just ISO 22301. They look to see, go into the 27000 family and see what is there in terms of understanding. 27005 is a great example, expanding out your approach so that you're looking at risks in terms of information assets, but you're also looking at the threats of cyber added onto that approach. And then you then are looking at to see what your teams are doing in terms of information security and whether they meet those requirements.
Okay, the other question is there a specific part of a standard that we should pay more attention? then we can incorporate the cybersecurity overall. Is a specific part of ISO 22301.
As being a more information security guy, I would say that I'm not going to respond and tell you that. I would tell you that in 27001 you would need to more look at the sections on SLAs, and this, because that's the aspect which probably is the weakest right now, is that if you are using external service providers and cloud security guys, how are you managing the business continuity and the cyber resilience on those sides? And I think if you went into 22301, you'd see that there's a similar aspect there in terms of managing external providers where we need to probably strengthen up as well.
Okay, thank you, Bevan. Thank you for sharing this highly informative presentation, and I also want to thank all the attendees for joining us live today. I strongly hope you had the chance to learn new things today, and I also suggest you to take time and see our future webinars that we will be hosting. On Wednesday we will host a webinar topic which is called Cybersecurity Testing. You can also take time and visit our website pcb.com on the webinar section and register for our future webinars. Thank you once again, and hope to meet you soon on our future webinars.